Before we begin, take a moment to slow down. This is a continuation of a deeper conversation about why the mind becomes tired and what it has always needed to recover. Mental exhaustion is not a new problem. It feels modern because our lives are louder, faster, and more demanding than ever before. But long before screens, notifications, and endless deadlines, people already understood this quiet kind of tiredness. Ancient wisdom recognized something we often forget today. That exhaustion is not always physical. Sometimes the body is capable, but the mind is worn down. Ancient thinkers believed that the human mind was never meant to be pushed constantly. It was designed for rhythm, for movement and rest, for effort and stillness, for action followed by silence. Today, we break that rhythm. We demand constant output, constant attention, constant thinking, and then we wonder why we feel empty, foggy, or emotionally drained. Ancient wisdom saw exhaustion as a signal, not a failure, a message, not a weakness. When the mind became tired, it wasn't judged, it was listened to. Modern culture tells us to override that signal, to drink more caffeine, to push harder, to stay busy. But ancient wisdom would ask a different question. What are you ignoring? One of the oldest ideas about mental exhaustion is this: when the mind carries too much, it begins to lose clarity. Not because it is broken, but because it is overloaded. Ancient people lived slower lives, but they were deeply aware of the mind's limits. They valued silence, not as emptiness, but as restoration. They understood that silence is where the mind reorganizes itself. Today, silence feels uncomfortable. We fill every gap with noise, music, videos, conversations, thoughts. But ancient wisdom knew that a mind without pauses slowly collapses inward. Mental exhaustion often comes from constant inner pressure. The pressure to be productive, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to become something more. Ancient wisdom taught that pressure without release creates imbalance, and imbalance always leads to exhaustion. They believed that rest was not something earned, it was something required, just like sleep, just like food, just like breath. One ancient idea was simple but powerful. If you never allow your mind to settle, it will eventually force itself to stop. Through burnout, through anxiety, through numbness. Mental exhaustion is often the mind's way of protecting itself. Another ancient insight was about attention. They believed attention was sacred. Where you place it determines the quality of your life. Today, our attention is scattered, pulled in dozens of directions at once. This constant division drains mental energy faster than physical labor ever could. Ancient wisdom warned against living with a divided mind. They believed clarity comes from doing fewer things with deeper presence. Mental exhaustion grows when attention is fragmented, when your mind is always elsewhere, when you are never fully here. They understood something else too, that the mind needs moments of meaning, not just moments of activity. Many people today are exhausted not because they do too much, but because what they do feels empty, disconnected, unaligned. Ancient wisdom placed great importance on inner alignment, living in a way that matched your values, your limits, your nature. When life moved against your inner rhythm, exhaustion followed. Another ancient lesson was about patience. They believed rushing the mind leads to confusion, and confusion leads to fatigue. Modern life rewards speed, but ancient wisdom valued steadiness, slow progress, natural pacing. They understood that growth forced too quickly breaks something inside. Mental exhaustion often comes from trying to live at a pace that isn't human. Ancient wisdom also warned against constant self-judgment. They believed harsh inner dialogue weakens the mind. Today, many people live with an inner critic that never rests. Every mistake analyzed, every pause labeled as laziness, every struggle turned into self-blame. This constant judgment drains more energy than any task. Ancient wisdom encouraged self-compassion, not as indulgence, but as balance. They understood that a mind under attack cannot heal. One of the most important ancient ideas was this: a tired mind does not need punishment. It needs understanding. Mental exhaustion is often misunderstood as a lack of discipline, but ancient wisdom saw it as a sign of imbalance between effort and restoration. They believed the mind, like nature, has seasons. Times of growth, times of rest, times of quiet rebuilding. Forcing productivity during a season of exhaustion only deepens the problem. Ancient wisdom respected cycles. They knew that forcing constant output leads to long-term collapse. They also understood that solitude was not loneliness. It was nourishment. Time alone allowed the mind to release accumulated tension, to process emotions, to regain perspective. Today, solitude is rare, and mental exhaustion is common. Ancient wisdom would not tell you to do more. It would tell you to remove what is unnecessary. Less noise, less comparison, less pressure, less self-blame. Mental clarity returns when the mind feels safe to slow down. Another forgotten lesson is this: rest is not passive. It is active recovery. Silence heals. Stillness restores. Presence renews. Ancient wisdom did not fear doing nothing. They understood that doing nothing was sometimes the most important thing. Mental exhaustion is not something to fix overnight. It fades when the mind is allowed to breathe again, when attention becomes gentle, when expectations soften, when pressure eases. Ancient wisdom reminds us that you were never meant to carry everything at once. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to exist without constantly proving your worth. Mental exhaustion does not mean you are weak. It means you have been strong for too long without rest. The mind heals slowly, quietly, naturally, not through force, but through patience. And when the mind recovers, clarity returns, energy returns, purpose returns. Ancient wisdom knew this, and even now, it still does.